So what do you see on the screen? All of you type in the chat box. Let's see what do you see on the screen. Chapter 16, fantastic. That's what I wanted you to see. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. So we have gone through creating control plan. We are going to dive deep into the visual management today. And then we will have SPC charts in the next session and team celebration and reflection. If you're excited, type XITED in the chat box. And with a lot of excitement, we're going to start the session today on what is called as the visual management. Superb. Very good. So, productive factories and business processes possess a methodology for recognizing and resolving problems. All of you type R and R in the chat box. R and R. Recognize and resolve the problems. And that methodology is called visual controls. And today's session is something very, very different that you would not have seen in many places. This is handcrafted by me, okay, over several years. Okay. And I will share the presentation also with you. But you have to stay till the end. Okay. Okay, let us understand what is visually controlled process. All of you type, I generally called it TF, talking factory. All of you type TF in the chat box, talking factory. If you are in the factory, I said the factory should talk. If you are in a foreign land like China, where you don't know the language, it is a talking airport, right? In the airport, all the visual signs will let you clearly what this is. Right? Okay. Anyone can walk into a workplace and visually understand the current situation, which is self-explaining. All of you type SE in the chat box. SE, it should be self-explaining, self-ordering, self-regulating, and self-improving. SE, SO, SR, SI. Self-explaining, self-ordering, self-regulating, and self-improving. If this thought process is new to you, type B on bulb on moment, BOM in the chat box, bulb on moment, bomb in the chat box, bulb on moment. Because some thought process really go deep into it. Why is this sort of communication? Because it should go deep into our minds. All right. So, visually understand the current situation. That is self-explaining. Self-ordering is the work process. That is how the work should be done. It orders itself. What is the next step you should take? Self-regulating. It will automatically tell you whether you are ahead of the schedule, behind schedule, or in line with the schedule. And when there is an abnormality, self-improving. It should help you improve it. So the question, which of the following is not the element of visual control process? This is a simple question. Self-explaining, self-ordering, self-confusing, self-improving. This is a very simple question, right? Of course, it's not self-confusing, right? Okay. So it easily shows what should be, what actually is, and what is the deviation from expected. What it should be, what actually it is, and what is the deviation from expected. And it shows the improvement opportunities, presents enough necessary information to everyone who needs it in the clearest possible way. And that is what is visual control system. What it should be, what actually it is, what is the deviation expected, what is the improvement opportunity, and presents the necessary information to everyone who needs it in the clearest possible manner. So let's talk about hidden factory. All of you type HF in the chat box. Hidden factory. What is a hidden factory? Let's understand. The hidden factory creates information problems. Not everyone gets the same information. The hidden factory creates information problems. Not everyone gets the same information. Materials. You don't know what is the quantity of material that is available. Everyone tells some other data. How many of you can relate to it? Type ICR. I can relate in the chat box. Cost. Nobody knows whether the costs are high, low. Suddenly you get backfired because you have spent so much. The costs are shooting out of the roof. If you can relate to this, type I can relate in the chat box. Maintenance. You really don't know whether the machine is maintained, when it is last overhauled, when the oils are filled, nothing like that. Performance. Hey, are we doing good, bad, ugly? What is that? Sometimes you don't know. Whether we are on schedule, whether we are behind schedule, ahead of schedule, we don't know. And process. What is the exact process should we follow? Everybody tells something else. And quality, have you produced the right quality? How do you check? It is very subjective. One person rejects it, one person accepts it. How many of you can relate to all this? Type ICR in the chat box. This is called hidden factory, where the communication is a big issue. You don't see what it is. Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for active participation. So in the hidden factory, when nothing is seen, people are pushed to do faster. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. How many of you can relate to this? Okay. Whereas in a visual workplace, people work smoothly without any issues. Right? Okay, let's go through a question now. What is the main purpose of visual controls in the workplace? To make process more complex? To communicate important information and detect abnormalities? To replace human workers with automation? To store excess inventory for contingencies? Easy, right? Of course, the correct answer is B. You deserve a lot of chocolates, pizzas, burgers. Okay, well done. Right. So, poor visual controls is equal to poor practices. Poor visual control is equal to poor practices. So, while implementing the visual control, what all should we see? All of you type 5W1H in the chat box. 5W plus 1H. You can even type 2H or you can even type 3H, okay? Where are the controls needed? Why are the controls needed? What tools should be used to create visual controls? How to implement? Who will implement? When the tools will be in place? How long should you improve? How much should we improve? All that questions to be asked for visual controls, okay? Okay, I'm going to share with you something very interesting what I've designed, okay? It's called Bridge to Visual Factory, BVF. Okay, all of you type BVF in the chat box, Bridge to Visual Factory. Process delivery controls, quality controls, awesome. Quality controls, work controls, object controls, equipment and tooling controls, improvement target controls. So this is the bridge to visual controls. So visual management can be applied to process controls, quality controls, work controls, object controls, equipment controls, improvement target controls. If you found this awesome, and bulb on moment, type B on in the chat box if it is beautiful. Superb, right? Fantastic. So that's how you should imagine. You should not have any unwanted information that is there on the board, okay? Let's explain each and every one of them step by step. Okay, thank you very much for your active participation. I request each and every one of you to come to the upcoming webinar. Whoever is not part of the certification, come to the upcoming webinar. I'll tell you how to get an internationally recognized certification. Okay, so process and delivery controls. Let me explain you each and every one of them. We'll go through first the process and delivery controls. The goal of the process and delivery control is to see how the actual compares with the plan. How the actual compares with the plan. Do you have production control boards? You have workload capacities, workload or capacity controls. You have delivery control board. You have in-house vendors, outside vendors, Kanbans. If you can relate to this type ICR, I can relate to the chat box. So you might be having a lot of these are all called process and delivery controls. Okay, these are all called process and delivery controls. Go ahead and check in your shop floor. If any one of Kanban is the signboard, we'll explain towards the end of it. Okay, Kanban means signboard. We'll explain. So, if anybody who doesn't understand something, will ask. There is a last Q&A session towards the end of the session. We will answer everything. Okay. Thank you. So far, if you're finding it interesting, useful, valuable, fantastic, awesome, put it in the chat box. Let me draw some inspiration. Okay, that is the goal of this thing. Next, the question. The question is, which of the following is not a goal of process and delivery controls? Let's see. Seeing how the actual production compares to the plan, eliminating all quality inspections, using production control boards for monitoring, and managing workload and capacity. From the earlier slide, you could answer this question, right? Absolutely. So eliminating all quality inspection is not the goal of process and delivery controls. Fantastic. This is just an attention question, okay? I just wanted to make sure that you're attentive. Okay, so quality controls. So quality controls, how many people are in quality? Just type me in the chat box if you're in charge of quality. How many people are in quality? Okay, there are a lot of people who are in charge of quality, okay. Okay, there are a lot of people who are from quality, fantastic. Okay, so make the act of inspection a simple visual confirmation. All of you type wow in the chat box. Make the act of inspection a simple visual confirmation. Isn't it awesome? That's a goal. The act of inspection should be a simple visual confirmation. All right. Now, you know in quality, I'm not going to read all this in-process inspection data, Pareto charts, acceptable limit displays, quality boards, proper gauge. These are all part of, but the goal of quality control is to make the act of it. The goal is very important in each of these controls. Make the act of inspection a simple visual confirmation, whether it is confirming or not. Okay. If this is clear, type SC, super clear in the chat box. Then let's move on to work controls. Super clear, right? Okay, fantastic. The goal of work control is to maintain proper work practice and flow. To maintain proper work practice and flow. Standard work documentation, standard work combination, standard work layout, standard work description. Material flow diagrams, and-on is actually a visual signal. Okay, we'll talk about and-on and Kanban in the Q&A session. And production boards, line pacemakers, tool and die. So if people can relate to this type ICR, I can relate in the chat box. If you are in the factory and if you've seen all this job safety analysis and so on and so forth. Lockout and tagout indicators and all this. So the goal is to maintain proper work practice and flow. If this is clear on a scale of 1 to 10, please give me a 9 or 10. If the work controls is clear, let's move on to object controls. So object control is nothing but accuracy of locations and quantity at all times. So how do you make sure that you have the right quantity? Whatever you see, if you want to know anybody wants to know how many items and where it is lying, how much quantity is lying, then they should be able to know immediately. For example, the gauge inventory of raw materials, WIP indicators, work in progress indicators, okay, storage locations, addressing them, parts board clarification, and delivery control, and again Kanbans here also, aisle marking, location marking, and establishing a FIFO. So if many of you can relate to this object controls, type ICR, I can relate in the chat box. And if it is clear, give me a 9 or 10 if it is super clear. Awesome. Okay, thank you very much. Now, equipment and tools control. Okay, equipments and tools control. See, the goal of equipment and tool control is the elimination of search time, reduced quality or defects, reduce breakdowns, and minor stoppages. This is primarily caused by equipment and tools. You might have establish and maintain inspection scheduler. You might have inspection and lubrication marking maps, daily operation inspection and cleaning checklist. You might have a transparent covers to make easy inspections. You might have a tool board organizations, die fixtures, storage locations. You might have operation ranging marks in gauges. In gauges, you know, how many of you can relate to this? In gauges, you have some gauge markings, right? Like this. And the bolt tightness marking in critical areas and all that stuff. Okay, so this is equipment and tooling controls. So if equipment and tooling controls is clear, please give me 9 or 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 if it is super clear. Okay, fine. Fantastic. So what is the primary goal of equipment and tool controls? To increase the machine speeds beyond safety limits, to eliminate search time defects and breakdowns, to maximize the amount of tools used in production, to reduce operator responsibility in maintenance. Of course, the correct answer is B, to eliminate the search time, defects, and breakdowns. Thank you very much for the active participation today. Awesome. Improvement target control. Okay. So the goal is to increase effectiveness of lean by making results easy to understand, to make the results easy to interpret, and to make the results easy to act upon. To understand, interpret, and act upon. Like, for example, company or location department goals versus results. Display boards, example, Kaizen's best practices. Productivity rate, setup production rate, defect production rate. Cross-training, improvement targets. And this is just indicative that I've given. Okay. Some of you may relate to this. Those who can relate to this can type ICR. I can relate in the chat box. It may not be applicable to everyone, but this is just to give you what does the improvement target control is about. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So we'll come visual control pyramid. So if you can type VCP in the chat box, visual control pyramid. Visual control pyramid consists of 3 things. Okay, visual control pyramid consists of 3 things, let me tell you. But how this visual control is built, okay? First, you organize a workplace. You use the tools such as 5S. Then you have visual displays. The display is to share the established standards. Okay, communicate the important information. Communicate the information, share the established standard. That is visual display. All of you type VD in the chat box. VD in the chat box, visual display. The second is visual control. Okay, all of you type visual display versus visual control. All of you type VC in the chat box, VC. Okay, VC is build the standards into our place, warn about abnormalities. The visual control is warning about abnormalities. It is detecting the abnormalities. It is preventing the abnormalities. Okay. All of you type awesome in the chat box. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So let me quickly share with you some strategies for visual control. Okay. So visual controls, visual displays, and visual tools. Visual controls control the process. Visual displays give the information and labeling of the process. And visual tools is a part of the process. Let us go into the depth of it. Visual control, for example, you see the operating range, right? So different colors are there. Under is orange, safe is blue, and over is red. Okay. You have production control board, department A. What is the status, right? And you have here the slippage mark here, okay, somewhere. So visually you can control and say whether the nut is properly positioned or not. Condition tag. Based on the tag, you can visually see whether it is a normal condition, abnormal condition, whether you should use it, not use it, and stuff like that. Painted line. So visually you should know whether it should be kept in this situation or beyond that. Shadow boards. Shadow boards is like you keep the tools, and behind the tools is the shape of the tool. Okay, the shadow of the tool is written there, so that when you take the spanner out, exactly the spanner should go into the. And any of you can relate to all this, type ICR in the chat box, because if you are in production, you will be able to relate to all this. Awesome, fantastic. Of course, speed. Visual controls, if you see here, speed of 55 minutes is also a sort of control to tell you that you control your speed, right? And also this is a visual control to tell you, okay, go slow. And there's also Kanban card limits your response. Kanban card, we will deal it in a separate subject, okay? How much to be taken, when it should be taken, what should be taken, and stuff like that. And also this is one machine component where you will also know visual guarantee allows the correct position, correct response only, right? And the hand-on lights also, like the signal lights, it will provide you some sort of an indication. So the purpose of visual control is to communicate important information, usually visual standards, which control various activities based on the information of the standard. So build a standard into workplace, warn about abnormalities. Okay, like this is the shadow board I was telling, like when this is taken out, it can be going into same place. And warn about abnormalities. When something is coming, you can always tell them. Visual control also detects the abnormality. Okay, like in the Xerox machine. Okay, it will prevent you from going forward. The paper gets jammed, right? Stop defects from moving ahead. And even the plug points where you have the 3-pin is also to prevent abnormalities. Okay, to keep the defects, prevent abnormalities, the defects will not happen. You cannot put it in the wrong way. All right. And visual displays, some more examples. Communicates information. Like visual displays communicate information, communicates a standard. Like you have here the standard work layouts, right? And stuff like that. And many of you, I'm just going a little faster because these are all very common examples in factories. A way to mark off location areas like this. You know that nothing should be kept under the fire extinguisher. Some marks like that. This is also a part of visual tools or visual controls. And height indicators, maximum, minimum indicators, right? You're storing some carton box or something like that, and you have red, yellow, and green. Green means that we are comfortable level. Some people even have blue, which means that it's excess inventory, right? And yellow means a reorder point. Hand-on is a signaling system, okay, that will signal the management that the problem has happened. And in Toyota, whenever any problem happens, an hand-on card is pulled and the SMS goes to the manager, he immediately comes to the place and solves the problem. So it's a signaling system. So the Kanban strategy is you have a card which will tell you what parts to be taken, how much quantity to be taken, when it has to be taken. And accordingly, there is something called production Kanban. There is a withdrawal Kanban. This is also a sort of visual tool, but this is not the scope of this webinar. So I'll explain about Kanban in detail later. But all that you need to do is there's something called as a Kanban, which is a signaling card, which will tell you how much quantity to withdraw, when to withdraw, from where to withdraw, etc. There's something called withdrawal Kanban when the inventory is withdrawn, and production Kanban, which provides operation instructions. And there is also visual dashboards like this, okay, where if you see the production factories, you have 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9. What is the plan? Okay, plan is in the first hour, it is 60 of 60, second is 60 of 20, third is 50 of 170, etc., etc. So at the end of the shift, it should be 25 of 455, okay, but actual is this, okay. So the difference is this, the reason is this. So this is the plan, this is the do, this is checked, and this is act. So these are all some sort of a visual indicators for managing production. So many of you can relate to this. Whoever can relate to this can type ICR in the chat box if you can relate to this. So what does a Kanban system help maintain? Okay, Kanban system, a push-based production system, a manual paper-based scheduling system, a pull-based production system, and an unpredictable supply chain. So what does it mean? This is a pull-based production system. All of you type pull in the chat box. It's a pull system. So this is called as a spaghetti diagram. It looks like a noodle, right? And this is also a sort of visual to tell you how people are moving, how the material is moving. So there are two types of spaghetti you can put. One is to track the people movement, and one is to track the product movement. If you see the green line here, it tracks the product movement. And if you see the blue line here, it tracks the people movement. Okay, this is also used for standardizing the workflows. Okay, there is something called a standard work combination sheets, which will deal sometime later, and that helps in that. Okay, so be creative, and visual tools can be used to achieve higher 5S levels. How many of you agree with this? Type agree in the chat box. With visual controls, you can achieve higher levels of 5S. Okay, with visual controls, you can achieve higher workplace organization. With visual controls, you can identify emergency help and equipment. With visual controls, you can standardize work process. How many of you agree with this? With visual controls, you can facilitate assignment handoffs, like one shift to other shift when you want to give it to someone else. With visual controls, you can definitely distinguish between what is normal and abnormal. With visual controls, you can reduce waste in the time. With visual controls, you can see the workflow. In office also, you see a lot of visual control systems, right? And things like that. Okay.